All right, so today we're going to be looking at Redpill Mastery. Seems like a lot of guys are talking about this one, especially in the married Red Pill communities online. You guys specifically requested this deep dive. And from what I'm seeing, it's all about giving men a new playbook.
It's a pretty bold goal, for sure. I think what stood out to me was just how much it covered. I mean, you've got everything in here, from personal finances to building social networks to, understanding these big societal shifts that are having, a real impact on relationships. It's not just about self-improvement tips and tricks, but it's really about understanding the whole playing field,
Yeah, that's what I thought was so interesting is like, look, you can level up your game all you want, but if you don't understand the forces that are working against you, we're still going to be in trouble. And one of the first things the book dives into is this idea of financial independence.
Right.
And it even quotes Warren Buffett, who says, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. And I think that hits home for a lot of us.
Absolutely. Especially, you mentioned the married Red Pill community. Yeah. I mean, that quote goes right to the heart of that whole idea of covert contracts in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Where financial stress, it can become a huge point of leverage. And you know that. By achieving financial independence, you're not just securing your own future, but you're actually creating more equality and freedom within your relationship.
I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
It's not just about the money itself.
Right.
It's about, like you said, the power dynamic.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how does the book suggest guys go about achieving this financial freedom?
I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they think, oh, get rich quick scheme.
Right.
That sort of thing.
Easy money.
But this is really not about that at all. This book is about building a solid foundation, through practical strategy.
Right.
Things like, investing in the stock market, real estate, even starting your own business. It's about taking control, rather than being at the mercy of a job. Or even worse, feeling trapped in a relationship because of finance.
Yeah. I could definitely see how that would resonate with a lot of men.
Yeah.
Who are feeling that pressure, especially guys who are, maybe starting to question some of those traditional roles within their marriage. It's almost like this book is saying, look, you can rewrite the rules if you want to, but you need to have that financial security to do so.
That's a really good point. And, I think it connects really well to this whole red pill concept of being a high value man, and this is something that a lot of people get wrong. I think it's not just about looks or, status or whatever. It's really about having the resources and the mindset to actually go out and create the life that you want.
Okay, so we've got the finances, that's like the foundation.
Yeah.
But then the book kind of jumps into this whole other area of social dynamics and communication. And it really talks about the importance of mastering small talk, building strong social networks, which, I don't know, it seems a little counterintuitive for guys who are already, feeling maybe a little disillusioned with mainstream society.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. But here's where it gets interesting. The book's argument is that even if you're questioning the system, even if you disagree with it, you still have to be able to function within it.
Right.
And mastering communications is really like learning the language of power. It doesn't matter whether you agree with the current power structure or not. It's about being able to connect with people, build rapport, influence outcomes. So, even if you don't like the game, you still got to learn how to play it.
So it's not about conforming.
Right.
It's about using those skills strategically to get what you want.
Yeah. And it actually ties into the red pill concept of game.
Oh, okay.
Which, I think this book kind of reframes it as a more holistic approach to social dynamics. Understanding human psychology, both male and female, and using that knowledge to navigate social situations, with confidence and with success.
Now, for someone who's coming at this specifically from that married red pill perspective, how does the book suggest they apply these skills within their existing relationship? Because it sounds like a lot of this is geared towards, dating and meeting new people.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think, what the book emphasizes is that these skills are actually transferable to any relationship, even your marriage. So, by improving your communication, understanding those unspoken dynamics, learning how to create those win-win scenarios, you can actually strengthen your existing relationship. Even if you are kind of renegotiating the terms of that covert contract.
So it's not about throwing the whole relationship out.
Right.
It's about using these red pill strategies to maybe improve it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about becoming more aware of your own needs and desires, but also, understanding your partner's perspective at the same time. And, the book argues that through, open communication
Okay.
and strategic negotiation, you can actually create a much more fulfilling and equitable partnership, even, within the existing framework
Yeah.
of your marriage.
Okay, so we've got this groundwork being laid
Yeah.
with, the financial independence and then the social mastery.
Right.
But then the book takes kind of a turn and it goes into this whole concept of cultural Marxism and SJW ideology. And this is something I'm sure resonates with a lot of guys in the Red Pill community who feel like the culture has really shifted dramatically.
Oh, absolutely. And this is really where I think this book tries to connect those personal struggles to a larger historical narrative. Like to really understand the challenges that men are facing today, particularly in marriage and relationships. You got to look at how Western institutions have been influenced by, certain intellectual movements. So it's like peeling back the layers of the onion a little bit to see how we got here.
So it's not just about individual self-improvement.
Right.
It's about understanding the broader cultural context.
Exactly. Yeah, and the book dives into all sorts of, intellectual history, exploring things like, the Frankfurt School, critical theory, and how those ideas have kind of permeated academia, media, even the legal system. It's about recognizing those patterns, those narratives that we see all around us, and then understanding how they might be impacting your own life. And even, your own marriage.
Yeah. And I could see how that would be empowering for guys who feel like they're kind of swimming upstream.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're not crazy. There are real forces at play here that are, shaping the world around us.
Right.
And by understanding those forces, you can start to develop strategies for navigating them, for protecting yourself, protecting your family, and even for pushing back against them.
Okay. So that sounds great.
Yeah.
Like a very powerful idea. But how does the book suggest, how do you actually do that? I mean, you can feel very overwhelming to go up against these, these massive cultural forces.
Well, I think it starts with education.
Okay.
The book encourages men to read widely, to analyze information critically, and to really develop their own informed opinions. It's about becoming aware of the narratives that are being pushed and then being able to deconstruct them, see the agendas behind them, and counter them, with logic and reason.
Reclaim that power.
Exact. Yeah. Reclaiming that intellectual power, not just accepting what you're being told, but thinking for yourself. And it's about finding your voice, being able to articulate your own perspective and engage in those conversations, even when they're uncomfortable.
And I think that's so crucial, especially for guys who are feeling, like you said, silenced or marginalized.
Yeah.
Like you do have a right to your own beliefs. And I think even more importantly, you have a responsibility to express them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about stepping into your power, both intellectually and socially. And that actually leads us to the next big theme in the book, which is masculinity itself. And it really dives deep into this concept of masculinity, looking at it from both a biological and evolutionary perspective. It challenges that idea that all these traditional male traits are just social constructs, saying they're actually deeply rooted in our biology, millions of years of evolution.
And I'm sure that ruffles some feathers, especially in today's climate. So what's the book's take on how all this relates to marriage, those unspoken contracts that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, well, it argues that a lot of the conflicts we see in modern marriages are coming from this disconnect between those hardwired male drives and the expectations that, modern society is putting on men, because we're biologically wired for certain roles, certain behavior, but those are often bumping up against the current cultural narratives, if you were.
Like a nature versus nurture kind of thing.
Exactly.
We're told to be one way, but our biology is like, nah, we want to go this way.
Yeah. And that creates a lot of internal conflict for men, and it spills over into their relationship, leading to resentment, frustration, that feeling like, you're constantly being asked to suppress your true self.
Right, like you're always holding back. And I could see how that would just breed all these, unspoken resentments, unmet expectations, which then leads to, all the problems. So does the book offer any solutions for bridging this gap?
Well, it encourages men to embrace their masculinity, but not in that, toxic way that a lot of people think about when they hear that. It's about understanding those drives, those innate drives, and finding healthy ways to express them, both within your marriage and, in your life in general.
So it's not about just conforming to some, outdated stereotype of what it means to be a man.
Right.
But it's about understanding yourself better.
Yeah.
And finding a way to kind of be authentically masculine.
Right.
in the modern world.
Exactly. And that might mean renegotiating those contracts. Those unspoken contracts in your marriage, setting clear boundaries, having open conversations about each other's needs and expectations. It's about finding that balance between the biological reality of being a man and the complexities of modern relationships.
Right. And it's not all internal work, though, right? The book also talks about taking action in the real world.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that it emphasizes is, physical fitness, almost framing it as a way of kind of reclaiming that primal masculine energy.
It's funny you say that because it's not just about, looking good or being healthy. The book actually argues that physical strength and discipline, these are actually essential components of masculinity, not only for yourself, but also to be able to protect the people that you love.
It's interesting because for a lot of men in that red pill community, there's this sense that society has become almost increasingly feminized, and that men are being kind of encouraged to be more passive, more, emotionally sensitive.
The book definitely tacks into that. It argues that while there's nothing wrong with emotional intelligence, it shouldn't come at the expense of those core masculine traits, like strength, assertiveness, decisiveness. These things have been essential for men, throughout human history for survival and success.
So it's about finding that balance, like reclaiming those aspects of masculinity that maybe have been, downplayed a little bit, maybe even demonized in recent decades. It's almost like a call to action, to step up and embrace that responsibility.
And it ties back to the covert contract idea too,
Yeah.
By becoming stronger, both physically and mentally, you're not just improving yourself. You're actually shifting that power dynamic, within your relationship. You're becoming more valuable as a partner. A man who can actually provide and protect, which, let's be honest, that's attractive to women on a primal level.
Right. So we've got this understanding of masculinity, reclaiming these more traditional roles, becoming stronger, more self-reliant.
Yeah.
But the book doesn't stop there, does it? It also dives into this whole world of like personal growth, developing that mindset.
Of a red pill master.
Yeah. It's about taking all of that external stuff
Yeah.
and integrating it with a powerful internal transformation.
Right. Cultivating those traits that are really essential for success in any area of life. Things like discipline, resilience, confidence, emotional intelligence, the ability to set goals and actually achieve them.
So it's almost like a blueprint for becoming like the best version of yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how does the book suggest guys go about that? I mean, it sounds like a pretty tall order, especially if you're already feeling, kind of stuck in a rut.
Well, it's about taking ownership of your own growth. And it offers a lot of practical strategy. Things like, setting clear goals, developing daily routines, practicing mindfulness, seeking out mentors. It's about creating that structure, a system for self-improvement that allows you to consistently, level up.
I like that. It's not just hoping for the best. It's like, making a plan.
Right.
And then taking those deliberate steps.
Exactly. Yeah. And that ties back to, the whole red pill philosophy of taking control of your life, recognizing that you're not a victim of circumstance. You are the architect of your own destiny.
It's empowering.
Yeah.
It's saying you have the power to change. You have the power to grow. You can create the life you want. But you got to be willing to put in the work.
Exactly. And that work involves not just those external changes, but also that internal transformation, developing that mindset, the emotional resilience, that unwavering self-belief that are, really essential for red pill mastery.
So we're building this foundation of self-reliance, this strong internal core. We've got that understanding of masculinity, the forces at play in society, but the book goes even deeper, right? It starts talking about purpose, like finding that deeper sense of meaning.
It's about going beyond just the material success, the status, the relationship. It's about asking those bigger questions. What is my purpose? What legacy do I want to leave behind? What impact do I want to have on the world?
Like those existential questions.
Yeah. And, those can be intimidating for people, especially, in the married red pill community, where there's already that sense of questioning those traditional roles and expectations. But, the book argues that this is about reclaiming that sense of agency, of having a mission, being driven by something bigger than yourself. And that this is what really separates the men who simply survive from the men who actually thrive.
So it's not just about fixing your marriage or achieving financial success. It's about finding that thing that gives you, a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Exactly. And that purpose might be different for every man. For some guys, it might be about being a great father.
Right.
For others, it might be about building a business or making a difference in their community.
Right.
But the point is to find that thing that lights you up, that gives you that fire, and then pursue it with passion.
It's inspiring. You know, even in a world that feels kind of chaotic and disillusioning,
Yeah.
you can still create your own meaning, leave your mark on the world.
Exactly. And the book argues this is a crucial part of Red Pill Mastery. You know, understanding that you're not just here to consume, you're here to contribute,
Right.
to create, to make the world a better place than you found it.
Okay, so we've got this foundation of strength, this drive for purpose, understanding of the world. But then the book comes back around to relationships, right?
Yeah.
And specifically those challenges that men are facing
Yeah.
in the modern dating landscape. And this is where it gets really, red pill, like understanding the dynamics of attraction,
Yeah.
mastering game,
Yeah.
navigating this new terrain where the old rules don't seem to apply anymore.
Right. And the book actually acknowledges that dating has become incredibly complex, especially for men who are, really committed to this red pill philosophy. And it argues that those traditional dating norms have been disrupted and men need to adapt if they want to be successful.
And that's where those red pill tactics come into play.
Yeah.
The ones that often get, criticized for being manipulative
Yeah.
or disrespectful.
The book actually addresses that head on. And it argues that game is often misunderstood, that it's not about tricks or manipulation, it's about understanding the psychology of attraction and using that knowledge to create genuine connections.
So it's about being authentic, but also being strategic.
Exactly.
Understanding what women are looking for and being able to present yourself in a way that's both, genuine and attractive.
Yeah. And it's about being confident, assertive, decisive. These are qualities that are traditionally associated with masculinity, but are often kind of discouraged in today's society.
Right.
And the book argues that these qualities are actually essential for attracting high-quality partners who are looking for strong, capable
And
men.
again, I can see how that would appeal to a lot of men.
Yeah.
Or feel like, they're being told to kind of downplay their masculinity. It's like, look, these qualities are not toxic.
Yeah.
They're actually attractive.
Right.
Own them, embrace them, and use them to your advantage.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming that confidence, that power, but not in a way that's, domineering or controlling, but in a way that's authentic and empowering.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the financial independence, social dynamics, the cultural forces at play, masculinity,
Yeah.
personal growth, purpose, even dating strategy.
Yeah.
But there's this one piece of the puzzle that we haven't talked about yet, and that's how to deal with failure.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, no matter how much you prepare,
Right.
no matter how hard you work, you're going to hit roadblocks.
You're going to fail.
Right.
Absolutely.
So how does the book address that?
The book is very realistic about this. It acknowledges that failure is inevitable. It's part of the journey. And it's actually an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, it's not about avoiding failure. It's about learning to embrace it, seeing it as a stepping stone to success.
And the book, emphasizes resilience, that ability to bounce back from setbacks, learn from your mistakes, and just keep moving forward. And it argues that this is one of the most important qualities a red pill man can develop.
So how do you build that resilience? Because it's one thing to say, don't give up.
Right.
But when you're in it,
Right.
when you're feeling discouraged,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Well, the book provides a framework for reframing failure, for seeing it not as a personal defeat, but as a valuable lesson. So it's about, analyzing what went wrong, identifying areas for improvement, and then adjusting your approach.
Turning those failures
Yeah.
into fuel for future growth.
Exactly. It's about developing that, what they call the growth mindset.
Right.
That belief that you can always learn and improve no matter what challenges you face.
And I think that's such a powerful message, especially for men who are struggling, in their marriages or other areas of their lives. It's like, look, it's not over. You can learn from this. You can adapt. You can come back stronger.
And that's really the essence of the red pill philosophy. It's not about accepting defeat. It's about taking control, overcoming those challenges, and creating the life that you want.
Okay, so we've explored all these different aspects of the red pill, the philosophy, strategies, the mindset. But I keep coming back to this one question. What exactly is that red pill world? Like, what does it actually look like? Because the book is kind of advocating for this,
It paints a picture of a world where men embrace their masculinity, where they take responsibility for their own lives, where they build strong relationships based on mutual respect and understanding, where they contribute to society in meaningful ways and they live with purpose, integrity.
It sounds kind of utopian,
Yeah.
but also incredibly challenging. It's like calling for a radical shift, not just in individual consciousness, but in society as a whole.
It's definitely ambitious, but the book argues that it's achievable, and it starts with yourself. Taking those steps towards self-improvement and then radiating that outwards, influencing your family, your community, and ultimately the world around you.
Like that ripple effect.
Exactly.
You start with that individual transformation,
Yeah.
and it creates this wave of change
Yeah.
that can impact the world.
And the book argues this is the only way to create lasting change. Not by trying to force other people to conform,
Yeah.
but by becoming the change you want to see.
Okay, so we're starting to get this picture of what this red pill world could look like.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to our listener for a minute. Like, how can he start applying these ideas to his own life?
Yeah.
Specifically when it comes to his marriage and understanding these societal structures that he's concerned about.
Well, I think the first step, as we talked about earlier, is awareness. It's about paying attention to those contracts, those unspoken contracts in your marriage, the power dynamics, the ways in which you might be, compromising your own needs or suppressing your true self.
So becoming more mindful,
Exactly.
more observant, more attuned to those subtle but powerful forces at play.
Yeah. And once you have that awareness, you can start making, conscious choices, having those difficult conversations, setting boundaries, and negotiating a more equitable and fulfilling partnership.
Yeah, it sounds like it takes a lot of courage, though, and self-awareness to even, start those conversations, challenge those patterns, rock the boat a little bit in a relationship that might feel comfortable on the surface, even if it's not really serving you.
It's not easy, but the book argues that it's essential if you want to create a relationship that is truly aligned with your values, your goals. It's about stepping into your power, not in a way that's, domineering or controlling, but in a way that's authentic and empowering.
Okay, so we're talking about taking ownership of your marriage, understanding those dynamics, communicating your needs, setting boundaries. But what about those larger societal structures?
Yeah.
The ones that are impacting relationships, the ones that the book argues are influenced by, cultural Marxism and feminist ideology.
Well, the book encourages men to become more informed about those ideologies, to understand their origins, their core arguments, their impact on society. It's about recognizing those narratives, being able to deconstruct them, and then counter them with logic and reason.
So it's not just about kind of retreating into your own little world.
Okay.
You got to engage with the wider culture.
Yeah, even if it feels hostile, even if it feels unwelcoming. It's about finding your voice, articulating your perspective, and being part of the conversation.
And I think that's crucial, especially for men, who are feeling silenced or marginalized.
Yeah.
Like, you have a right to your own beliefs. And you have a responsibility to express them.
Absolutely. And it's about finding those like-minded people, building those communities of support where you can share your experiences, learn from each other, and strengthen your resolve.
The book talks a lot about, the importance of mentorship, of finding those men who've already walked the path
Yeah.
and can offer guidance and support. Where does it suggest guys go to find those mentors?
Well, it encourages men to seek out red pill communities, both online and in person, where they can connect with men who share their values.
To find your tribe.
Exactly. Yeah. Your brothers in arms. The book argues that this sense of community is essential for staying motivated, overcoming challenges, achieving, red pill mastery.
It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that you're not alone in this journey. There are other men out there facing the same challenges, asking the same questions, seeking the same solution.
Okay. Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground here, from the personal to the political to the practical to the philosophical. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought. The book argues that this red pill journey is not for the faint of heart. It requires courage, commitment, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. Are you ready to take that step?
That's the question, isn't it? The red pill path, it offers freedom and fulfillment, but it also demands, effort, a willingness to face those uncomfortable truths.
For our listener, if you are ready to explore the red pill further, we highly recommend checking out Redpill Mastery. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Playbooks.
I remember the journey to Redpill Mastery. This is an ongoing process. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep questioning everything.